Hello there, everybody. You'll have to excuse the fact that I'm wearing so many layers. I look like a human marshmallow tonight. It's one of those amazing days where if I turn on the heater, I'm overheating, and if I turn it off, I'm freezing. So yeah, fun times. Today's video is something I think is extremely important and not spoken of very often, at least not in the disabled and chronically ill community online. And I think it's because it's one of those very taboo subjects. It's something that people are like, oh yeah, we know it exists, but don't talk about that. That's not okay to talk about. But the thing is, I think regardless of what group you're in, whether you're in a minority group, whether you're in the majority, whether it's religious or social or economical or whatever group you're in, I think it's very important to admit to the strong points of your particular group, and it's just as important to admit to the negative side of the group that you're a part of, because it doesn't help anyone if you just talk about all of the things that you do right. Human beings learn by making mistakes. It's the only way that we can progress. We make mistakes, we understand that we've made a mistake, we learn how to fix the mistake or not make it again, and we move on. That's kind of how we operate. And within the disabled and chronically ill community online, most especially on Instagram and YouTube, I've noticed there is a definite issue, and I have not only realized it through watching these people myself, I've also realized it by looking on certain not so nice websites that exist out in the universe. And that is the fact that unfortunately with the internet, we see a lot of progress in society. We also see a lot of things popping up that are issues that we've never had to deal with before. And that's just one of those double-edged sword of having an online platform, just like with medical websites like WebMD. It's wonderful that we have this at our disposal, because if something happens, like you're on vacation, you don't know where the nearest clinic is, and you start having a really bad reaction to something, you can just look up your symptoms on a website like WebMD, find what kind of rash it is, and figure out right there from wherever you're staying how to solve the problem yourself, at least temporarily until you can see a doctor. It's amazing for that. It's also amazing if you are taking care of an ill relative or friend and they can only articulate so well what happens with their particular disease, and you look that disease up on these websites and you learn a little bit more about it, and then you can better care for them. Wonderful for that. What it isn't so wonderful for is that medical websites can only explain so much. They can only educate you so much because they have to condense things a lot. They have to explain the bare bones of each medical problem that they discuss. And as a result, a lot of things I'm sure you've seen run together. Well, actually, two things tend to happen. One is a lot of them run together and have very similar symptoms. So someone trying to figure out what a long-standing issue they're having is through these medical websites is most likely going to end up misdiagnosing themselves because a form of cancer or degenerative muscle weakness problem might have very similar symptoms to something that isn't so severe or dramatic. Or especially if you look up Lyme disease on medical websites practically has the same symptoms as the flu. If you looked up your symptoms when you were having the flu and you'd never had before, you'd think you had Lyme disease. And that's the big problem. The huge drawback from websites like this is that this isn't to throw younger people under the bus, because I'm very aware that people of all ages make this mistake, but especially people who did not grow up with the advancement of technology, people who just grew up and technology was already doing pretty well. Like we already had laptops for every member of the family. We already had iPhones for every member of the family. The internet was in your pocket pretty much from birth. Especially for people like that, it's very difficult to distinguish between when you have an actual medical problem that you need to seek help for and when you're just having slightly worse than usual typical issues like growing pains or hormonal changes or needing to just be on a prescription for something the rest of your life. Instead, they end up not only seeing these medical websites, but they also see these people who are doing relatively well on YouTube and on Instagram who do have a very real disorder that caused them to become disabled or that caused them to end up with a chronic illness that they'll never get better from. The fact that some of their symptoms may just so happen to sound similar to what that viewer is going through at the moment, the fact that that YouTuber or that Instagrammer is getting a lot of positive sympathy from the people who follow them because of what they're going through, and the almighty numbers game, the amount of people following them because of the fact that they have a chronic illness or a disability. These variables often end up culminating into a Frankenstein's monster that the internet has decided to name Munchausen by internet. For those of you who are unaware, Munchausen's is a real disorder. It is classed as a mental illness, and that is unfortunately a very tragic part of that disorder. People think that Munchausen is simply a person who is attention seeking, someone who thinks they're not getting the attention that they want, so they invent illnesses to make people feel bad for them so that they do get that sympathy. Unfortunately, that's kind of a nasty viewpoint of this mental disorder. While yes, the physical symptoms that they have manifested for themselves are not real in the slightest, they are not part of a real clinical diagnosable disease or chronic health problem. They are made by that person's own mind. These people are not necessarily doing this just for the attention or just because they're jealous of someone who's getting more attention than they are who is sick. People with Munchausen syndrome do honestly think that their symptoms are real. They are not liars. That is one of the big problems I've seen under the tags of Munchausen by internet, is that people think that they are lying. While yes, unfortunately, some people I've seen online have definitely lied. They have tried to pull one over. They have contradicted themselves terribly in not a grand space of time, which there are liars in every community. Any of them who actually have Munchausen syndrome, they get upset when people call them liars because they honestly believe they're not lying. They honestly believe that they have these symptoms. They feel it. They have convinced their brain so much that they are sick that if they say, I have gastroparesis, I feel sick when I eat, I feel sick when I eat, it's terrible, my stomach doesn't work, my stomach feels sick when I eat. The next time they eat, they're gonna convince themselves they feel sick now. They don't just go, munch, munch, oh, my stomach. Like, they might eat an entire hamburger or something and then honestly feel a twinge of pain in their stomach or work themselves up so badly that they throw up over it. And it's really sad because everyone's kind of attacking these people when in reality we should be helping them because they do indeed have a real medical problem. It's just not a physical one, it's a mental illness. And there's such a negative stigma towards a lot of people with a lot of different mental illnesses because unfortunately, even now, we still only understand so much of the human brain and the human psyche. Psychology is constantly evolving and changing, and so is what we know to be true of the human brain. Take my grandmother, for example. My grandmother has had neurological issues since she was a teenager. the doctors know she does. They have had to actually remove things from her brain in the past. She has such severe short-term memory loss that she will literally walk outside, turn the corner, and forget what she was doing, where she was going, and which direction home is. It's really bad. Every doctor, every specialist she's ever seen says, yes, you absolutely have some kind of neurological disorder. But when they check her scans, things come back normal. Things come back as they've never changed, not since the 1970s. And that's just what happens sometimes. And all they could really tell my grandfather about it is, well, we only understand so much of the human brain. We don't really know why this is happening to her. We know something's wrong, but we're not really sure what to do about it. This is also why there are a lot of problems when it comes to medicating people who are suffering from mental illness, and why so many of them end up with really serious adverse effects from their medications. It's not because medicating people with mental illnesses is a bad thing. It's because everybody's brain operates differently, and we don't even understand how the overall human brain works completely. So how do we have any hope of understanding why my brain's different than Phoenix's and hers is different than yours? On the opposite end, it's also a problem that we have Munchausen by internet, because it does make things harder for people who have true diagnosed physical disabilities and physical chronic health conditions. The reason it's such a problem is because in so many forums now and in so many tags, I see that every time someone on Instagram or Twitter or YouTube says that they are disabled or they have a chronic illness, and they start gaining a little traction, they start building their following a little more, maybe they have like 100K followers, I see all these people saying, hey, have you checked out so-and-so? Do you know if that person's actually sick? I can't tell. It's really hard. And they sit there racking their brains trying to figure out whether the person is really sick or whether they have Munchausen by internet. And it's horrible, because the negative effect of this is that no matter what you say, no matter what you do, some people are just not going to believe you, because of the fact that there are people out there who either believe they're sick, who really are not sick in a physical sense, or who are actually unfortunately lying about their condition to gain the sympathy points and to gain a larger following so they can easily make money. And what this is doing now is causing these people to automatically be suspicious of these newer people. It's causing them to automatically assume that, well, this person must be lying. They have a lot of the same symptoms as this person who was proven to be a liar or to have Munchausen, so let's not believe them. And then you have these people who are honestly creating their Instagram account to try to feel proud of who they are, to try to feel less alone in whatever they're struggling with. And instead, they're getting attacked because people think they're faking it. And I know how that feels. My sister was in a relationship with a really abusive guy. I won't talk about the details. I don't want to trigger anyone, but he was really bad. So this was one of those nasty people who wants to take people down. He wanted to feel stronger than whoever he was in the room with, and smarter and better, and he would do whatever he could to make that happen. Whether that was physically harming people or making them mentally doubt themselves, he really went above and beyond trying to break people down. And it didn't work on me. I had already been through 2 abusive relationships myself, and I knew all the signs. I knew this guy was bad news, but it's really hard to convince people when they're in that position that they're in that position. So all I could really do is make sure that I was kind of between them at all times. If she wanted to go to his house, I had to go for some reason too. Oh, I have to go and see his best friend that he lives with. Oh, I haven't seen him for a while. There was always an excuse like that, so I could keep an eye on him as best I could. I kept getting sicker and sicker. Around the midway point of their relationship, I had gone into hospital. Over the course of 2 weeks, I'd suddenly gotten so bad with a severe flare that I dumped 12 pounds in 2 weeks because I could only ingest fluids. I couldn't move. I couldn't even lift my head without my dad basically grabbing me by the back of the head or grabbing me by the hair and shoving my head onto a pillow or a wedge to prop me up. Everything hurt so badly that I could barely speak. I would just groan a lot. And the last thing I remember before I actually went into the hospital was my mother asking me, "What do you need? What's going on?" And I said, "Mom, I think I'm dying." So that was fun. I didn't want him to come with me to the hospital. Unfortunately, he kind of had to find out because my sister was obviously very upset about this and needed someone to lean on. And the entire time I was in the hospital getting poked and prodded at and scanned for everything under the sun, he was trying to convince her, my abusive ex, and pretty much all of our mutual friends that I was a liar, that I was going to try to seek out some kind of diagnosis so that I could, in his exact words, just sit on my ass on my dad's couch and collect money from him until he dies. That's horrible. And unfortunately, a lot of these people who are claiming that some of these new people have Munchausen by internet are doing that same thing because they're on such a witch hunt to find the people who really are lying and really are just trying to get attention. And I understand intentions are good with it. I know they're trying to defend people who are truly sick, but you have to be really careful. You have to be 100% sure, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that nothing is wrong with someone before claiming that they are a liar, whether that's a mental illness or a physical illness, because you can really hurt somebody. After a while with this idiot, I got so tired of having all these people question whether or not I was really sick that I actually stopped going to the doctor. I was going to the doctor almost every single week for a while because it was early diagnosis stages. When you just get diagnosed with a chronic disease, they have to see you super often because they're trying different things. They're trying different tests. They're trying different medications. Basically what my doctor was doing at the time, she was trying to make sure she tested me for anything else that also had those similar symptoms. She was also going through my entire medical history from the day I was born to that point in time to make sure she hadn't missed anything, and she was trying different medicines to see what would stick the best. When you're in that stage of diagnosis, you really are pretty much living at the doctor's office. And I was just done with it. I was like, I'm already physically going through a lot right now with getting poked and prodded all day, having medicines that make me feel sick because they're not the right one yet. And now this idiot has all these people coming to my house, messaging me on Facebook, talking about how I'm a liar and a terrible person. How can I do this to my dad? How can I mooch off my dad? And I just had enough. I was like, my mental health or my physical health has to stay standing, so I gave up and I just stopped seeing doctors, which really freaked my mom out because my mom was like, there's chart after chart from your entire life proving that you're sick. I don't know what they want. And I was like, Mom, with my permission, you can present him with my entire medical history. You can hand him that file folder that doctor just gave back to me. You can show him every single health problem that she tracked in my lifetime. He's still not going to believe you because he doesn't want to. It doesn't suit him in any positive way to admit that he was wrong. And that's another problem you have with some of these people who are trying to seek out the fake ill people on the internet, that if someone really is sick and now you've convinced everyone that they're faking it, who knows how far that reach has extended. Maybe they'll end up like me. Maybe they'll give up getting help because they just want to stop hearing what a terrible person they are. They need to save their own mental health. Don't become the cause of that. Again, I know intentions are good, and as someone who really is sick, I do appreciate the fact that people are out here trying to weed out the people who are trying to suck up all the attention, sympathy, whatever, and get money off of other people's struggles. I appreciate what you're trying to do, but like I said, just make sure you're absolutely sure. Get some kind of undeniable proof, like messages from the person where they admitted they're not sick or something, because it got even worse, obviously, after I stopped going to the doctor, and I did literally almost die in 2017 because I had stopped seeking help. And I got a big surgery that I had complications from. I still struggle with those complications on top of my other health problems, and I still also struggle with people deciding that they know my disability and my health story better than I do, online and off. As a final note in this video, I do want to let any of you know, if you are someone who's struggling with something that seems to be a physical problem, and you have seen doctor after doctor and no one can find literally anything, like they can find nothing at all, don't take this personally, but please consider also seeing a mental health professional. Trust me, it does take a very long time to get a clinical diagnosis of any kind. It will take years to get diagnosed with a chronic illness or some kind of physical disability, but even though it takes a while to get diagnosed, they will find things wrong with you physically. If a doctor can find literally nothing wrong with you at all, it might be mental illness, and mental illness can manifest physical symptoms. Don't feel bad about it. Don't feel guilty. Don't feel like a liar. You're not a liar. You're just sick in a different way than you thought you were. Just continue going to your physical specialists. Don't stop. Don't assume that it's fake or something. Keep seeing them, but also consider talking to a mental health professional and see if that helps at all. And there's no shame at all if it turns out that it is a mental illness. You are just as valid as any other sick person. I hope that this video kind of opened some eyes and educated some of you, whether you had no idea that this was a thing, or whether you are someone who has been guilty of kind of assuming someone just had Munchausen or was lying about their disability or their illness. And I don't know, I hope things get better soon, because there's already so much negativity in the lives of ill people. We don't need people making it worse by accident. But until next time, do something that makes you happy today, no matter what anyone else thinks about it, and I will see all of you again soon.